Okay, here goes. This is going to have to be good because I can't take any more of these takes. It's been like 15, and if I ramble, it's not because I don't have notes. It's because I just don't do camera stuff very well. Anyway, I chose discussion question from chapter one regarding warfare. How has warfare changed? What is asymmetrical warfare, and why has it become the dominant form of violence the United States faces? How does Iraq reinforce this change? Well, the warfare changed in that we had a shift from traditional and symmetrical warfare to this asymmetrical. Um, the traditional and symmetrical is um, your typical operations where you have uniformed military, they're established for that whatever particular nation, and they have a code of conduct and ethics, and whether they're engaged in war or not, there tends to be a declaration of war, an acknowledgement. Um, each party, whether there's more than two involved, they tend to know who their opponent is. Um, and it's not necessarily a stealthful operation. Also, they adhere to rules set by the Geneva Convention. Um, Asymmetrical is the opposite of that and um, dismisses Geneva Convention uh, code of conduct, and they may or may not, actually, I guess typically not, declare war. One may not know they're a target, they may not know they're an opponent. Um, this may or may not be one particular nation. It could be uh, groups from multiple nations that form an alliance and um, assert this military type action. Um, Typically, what they're doing is instead of choosing an opponent and fighting a war with that opponent based on how that opponent typically fights a war, they are just figuring out a way how to beat that opponent, whether it violates tradition or historical codes of conduct and ethic, um, and humanitarian approach. Um, Symmetrical warriors will uh, avoid civilian and um, human targets, whereas asymmetrical doesn't it does they don't really concern themselves with those kind of boundaries. In fact, they favor them because uh, they don't value humanity like a symmetrical warrior would, and they're more concerned with expediency, efficiency, and cost-cutting measures. So they're using atypical um, types of weaponry, things we wouldn't consider as weapons because they've never been used in that way before. For example, with the um, 9/11 attacks, they used commercial airliners and crashed them into economic civilian landmarks, and um, that was unheard of. Although those kind of things happen on a smaller scale throughout the world, that was an attack right within the mainland of American soil. So um, that was just something that um, countries that fight fair just don't do those kind of things. And all of a sudden, that was the way war was being conducted, whether we accepted it or not. Um, this is what the United States is facing most dominantly now because although the United States and some other countries have been very successful in traditional means, um, they have more stability and more tradition and more reason to fight fairly and operate within a more structured mode. But these other groups, whether they're nations or a group comprised of multiple nationalities, they either are unwilling or unable to compete in the same way and don't hold the same values. They have an agenda, and that is to um, win, and they don't necessarily concern themselves with all the extra in between. Um, Typical powers have gained such because they've earned it over a course of time and have fought incrementally over generations, whereas this emerging dominant asymmetrical warfare is utilizing um, very different means and out all of that um, diplomatic negotiations and um, um, honoring Geneva Convention conduct. And um, although these main powers have been successful in the traditional means, they've actually been so successful that they outpaced some of these countries that and groups that they couldn't even enter into typical symmetrical warfare if they wanted to, because it would be so costly to build up at the same level. So they've just kind of gotten creative and thought out of the box in a symmetrical warrior's mind that is just being a big bully and um, violating the rules and playing dirty. Um, but that's what they're doing. They can't really get in, penetrate the whole international arena in the traditional means, so they're just making up their own rules as they go along, and um, it directly violates a lot of those traditional rules and procedures, as well as the ethical and humanitarian type of approach Americans and other civilized countries and groups hold dear. Um, and Iraq reinforces this change because they've shown that it actually works, and that's a huge concern when the international community can realize that um, that these bullying tactics are swift and effective and can occur at any time. So this is a huge challenge America faces, um, that is very new for this modern era, and it challenges the ethics and approach that we have taken in the past and how we can incorporate new tactics while maintaining um, the aspects we hold dear for our own people and even our opponent. Um, it's a difficult scenario we face because our opponents don't care about civilians or humans in the same way we do, and um, it's a struggle to create new ways to deal with an opponent that in many ways is undetectable, difficult to identify because they don't necessarily identify themselves. We have to figure out different ways to track them down and and either cut them off or figure out what they're doing, whether it's before or after. We would like to prevent these type of asymmetrical assaults, but our whole system hasn't been set up to function that way. So we're just learning to adapt to a whole new approach, and we've been caught off guard, and it forces us now to reevaluate those things and think about different ways to approach our national security interests. Um, in the past, we've had larger standing armies, we could go in and occupy areas. That's not what's effective now and in the future. Um, we have to lean more towards technology and um, basically we don't have the luxury now of establishing the rules. Um, at this point in our history, there really are few rules. We have to deal with what's coming at us and try to predict um, what could be potential um, risks and threats and deal with them as they come and before they come and create technology um, and tools that we can effectively fight in this new forum that we've become um, not the aggressor, but um, we've been put on the offense, and we haven't been used to that for quite some time. So it's a radically different approach, and um, how our military was structured in the past is not going to be effective for this new asymmetrical war counteraction. I'm not really sure what to call it, but